SugarBee Apples is one of our new sponsors, just joined us here recently. And so we're really happy to have them as a sponsor.
Thank you, Kevin. So hello, I'm Julie DeJarnett with Chelan Fresh. We are apple, pear, and cherry growers in Washington State. We grow all the apples, pears, and cherries that you would anticipate, conventional and organic. But for this relationship, we're here to talk about SugarBee apples, which is a proprietary variety of apple. So SugarBee apple is the apple that we hope can earn its place onto your menu. I know you're all familiar with apples. It's not a new commodity that we're bringing to you, but apples are very, very different across the different varieties. And what makes the SugarBee really unique and has really been engaging with consumers is it was created by bees. And so all the different ways that new varieties come to be, the SugarBee apple is a natural cross. And so you have test orchards where the bees can naturally cross-pollinate. The SugarBee was created when a bee cross-pollinated a Honeycrisp. And so we know the mother tree was a Honeycrisp. We're not sure what the other variety was. And so we kind of keep it as a mystery. That's part of the marketing of it, give the bees all the credit, and named it the SugarBee apple. And really enjoy that origin story as a point of difference. It's something that you will see through all of our branding and marketing to consumers as well as in retail stores. When you're looking at the sensory profile of what makes it different, it's not just the name, it eats very differently as well. It is a bicolored red and yellow skinned apple. Visual contrast, it really pops out on shelf. It's got that same kind of linosol structure that you see. It is a very naturally slow to browning apple, and so we see a lot of people using it for raw applications, charcuterie boards, things like that. It's got kind of a yellow honey flesh interior. The flavor profile is a very high aromatic, natural notes of honey, caramel, and molasses, but not overly sweet. Some of the varieties can be almost sugar bombs to where you have a hard time finishing the entire apple. This is one that's got a nice touch of acidity with it, so it gives a fully balanced flavor experience. Not that you have to take my word for it. We do all of the traditional testing that you do on apples from the USDA standards. The bricks and the pressure are two things that we use to describe apples and their eating appeal. SugarBee comes in with a brick score of 15.8 very, very consistently. And so when you're looking at that, that is sweeter than a Fuji. When we're educating people on all the different varieties of apples we grow, you'll put together a sweet to tart flavor meter. Fuji is generally what you would call the sweetest apple, and you have the Granny Smith at the other end for the tartest apple. You see SugarBee consistently coming in as a sweeter bricks level than Fuji. And Honeycrisp, which is one of the more popular, kind of what most people consider to be the premium apple if you're not getting into branded varieties, is down around a 12.6. Still a very, very good eating apple. It just scores higher from a SugarBee standpoint at that 15.8. From a crispy kind of crunch standpoint, the pressure of a SugarBee is going to rival the Granny Smith, which is still the one that most people think of being that hard, crunchy bite, coming in at a 17.1 behind the Granny Smith 17.7. So a real sweet, real crisp apple. Honeycrisp, we love it. We grow a lot of them, but it is going to have that little bit lower pressure. And so if it's something that you work with a lot, you would definitely recognize that difference in how it performs from a sweetness and overall crunch standpoint. When we're thinking about how you would apply that sweetness and the brick score to your menus, all kinds of ideas come about. So definitely the raw application with it being crisp and slow to brown. Think about it in fresh salads, fruit bowls, charcuterie boards, things like that. We often get asked how it bakes. It definitely holds up to its shape. So the large cell structure, it holds up to heat really well. A lot of baked apples or pies, things like that, where you want to have a good texture maintained. SugarBee performs very, very well in there. And we've had several of our chef partners and influencer ambassadors who talk about the opportunity to reduce added sugars due to the sweetness of the SugarBee apple. And so they're not having to put in as many refined sugars and things like that for the sweetness they're wanting to hit in their recipes. Saucing is another great opportunity for SugarBee apples. That natural sweetness and the acidity creates a really complex gastrique compost. It pairs well with savory menu items, which Kathleen will talk to you about in just a little bit. And then juicing, it's got a really good juicing ratio. We do offer beyond just the SugarBee Fresh apple, a SugarBee apple cider program. That's something that we've been selling to retail and through the specialty markets, and it is another SKU that is available for the SugarBee family. One thing that we get asked a lot about is how we're able to maintain consistency of a SugarBee apple. I won't go too apple nerd on you, but like I said, we grow all of the other commodity varieties as well. The thing about those is really they can be grown by anyone, anywhere. If you want to grow a Honeycrisp apple or something like that, you can just have, you have the acreage. It's not hard to get a Honeycrisp apple. What that leads to can be some pretty fragmented growing practices, some inconsistencies in growing practices, the types of places that they're planted, the elevations. Apples really do need to be grown in the right places and harvested with the right protocols to ensure that they've got the consistent eating experience as well as the long-term storability so that you do get a year-round crisp, crunchy apple. That's not something that you can always guarantee when you have such a wide variety of growing conditions and partners versus the consistent supply of a controlled variety like SugarBee. These are all grown by fifth and sixth generation growers in Washington State. We grow from down to the southern border, not far from where you are, Kevin, in Portland, all the way up to the Canadian border in the Tonasket area. So that whole central Washington is the prime place for growing apples. Perfect environment for SugarBee apples with these fifth and sixth generation growers that have been doing it for obviously their entire lives. And so you have a very controlled supply chain growing process, where these are planted, how they're harvested, at what point they're harvested, all of the details that you want to ensure that you do get a really good, consistent, premium eating variety. The thing I'll highlight for you is those growers that I talked about. And so here you're seeing a couple of the examples. That top left picture, Cass Gebbers is on the left-hand side of that. He's a fourth generation farmer raising the fifth generation now, and the sixth generation isn't too far behind him. His family is actually one that started apple growing in Washington State with a few other pioneering families out there. Some of the earliest Granny Smith trees came from the Gebbers farms. And he is one of the first planters of SugarBee apples as well. And so I asked him, why SugarBee with all the varieties you do? And they've done Cosmic Crisp. We grow some of those and other newer varieties that you may have heard of. But he will hands down say the moment he tried a SugarBee from Chuck Nystrom, who is the breeder standing right beside him, he knew that this was the one. It's a good grower-friendly apple, but just the flavor experience, the storability of it made it unique and different to where he had to jump on board with planting it. Dave Robison, a third-generation family farmer. Sam Godwin, another third-generation. You see the organic note over Sam. We do grow both conventional and organic SugarBee apples, and so those are available. These are just a few of the farmer examples. There's many more out there that are part of this controlled program.
Hey, Julie, I like
Yes.
the mascot you have there. That could be
Yeah,
something I could see on a basketball court.
that has been so popular. People love it. Kids love it. We take it to events. You mentioned basketball. We just became the official healthy snack of the Seattle Mariners. That announcement, Jen, I don't think we've put it out yet. I might have just jumped the gun a little bit. I think we're announcing it tomorrow.
That's awesome.
But it's a lot of fun where this mascot can show up and the attention it can draw. Now I'm telling you all the good stuff. I will tell you one challenge, and I think it's more of an opportunity, is apples are having a little bit of a hard spot right now. You're not seeing consumption growth for the apple category in general in the US market. We jumped in and did a really deep consumer insight study just within the last couple of months. Those results came back last month to figure out how are consumers feeling about apples? What's going on? How are they shopping the fresh fruit category in total? And how are apples stacking up? One of the questions we asked is, are there fruits that you purchase mainly for health benefits? And 76% of the people said, yes, there are, but only 32% of them are buying apples for the health benefits. It's interesting because everybody can say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. They have a very hard time with that next question of, but why? What makes it unique and special? From a competitive standpoint, They have lost a little bit of their trust and credibility. They've fallen behind the healthy perception of commodities like bananas, blueberries, and avocados. What's kind of interesting there is blueberries and avocados are two examples of fruits that have had major marketing campaigns. And so blueberries, people still know that they're rich in antioxidants from the 1990s. That was one of the first kind of health messaging marketing initiatives that was done with the Highland Blueberry Group. And so they really connect blueberries with antioxidants. Avocados of Mexico has done a phenomenal job kind of pushing avocados and rebranding the fats as a healthy fat. That's the same type of work that you're seeing us do with the natural sugars of apples being a natural healthy sugar, not just a sugary fruit that can potentially wreak problems for your diets. And so that's something that you're going to see a lot of work being done in the apple industry to close that health awareness gap. The number one reason why people say they buy fruits and vegetables is that they're rich in antioxidants and flavonoids. That was the number one driver, but only 21% of people know that apples contain that benefit with the antioxidants, the quercetin, things like that. When we went a little deeper into that study, we were saying, okay, but how do you educate the different generations? What makes things, really sticky for them? If you look at all the health and wellness benefits of apples, across the board, everybody appreciates that they are a really good source of fiber, and not just fiber, soluble and insoluble fiber. That combination and what it can mean for your gut health paired with the hydration of an apple, 80% of it is water, really brings forward a gut health solution that a lot of people are looking for. That resonated across the base a little bit more with the Gen X group. But millennials said, you know what, I'm more interested in understanding the mental and brain health attributes of an apple. So we educated them a little bit on that. And they said this would change my interest in buying apples or, finding places to incorporate more apples into my diet. The Gen Z grabbed on really hard to the hydration and recovery, a very active generation. And so using apples as something to maybe fuel up before they're going out to a active workout or just a day of activity, and then the hydration for the recovery. And so really pushing hard for people to remember why apples are such a good product for them to consume more of within their diet. Thinking about how that could apply potentially in the restaurant industry and with menu strategies, we are seeing people want to know more about the foods that they're buying, want to know more about the healthy eating solutions they're choosing. And so Gen Z looking towards a menu strategy that supports their functional snacking desires, the raw applications, the salads, things like that, because it does resonate with them that there's prebiotic gut health and natural energy in apples. For millennials, looking at that family-friendly dining, clean labels, recognizing that apples are a nutrient-dense choice, zero added sugars is something that seems to resonate with that group. And then, as I mentioned, those Gen Xers out there, we'll talk about GLP-1s specifically on the next slide, but there are a lot of people using GLP-1s, and they're trying to figure out how to pair foods with those to support the goals that they have in weight loss in general. Healthy eating. They're very mindful about what they're putting into their bodies. They do want indulgence and they're looking for balanced entrees, but they're also trying to stay on track and meet their goals. Within this study, what we did is we asked this group, and it was 6,000 people, 4,000 of them who are consuming apples regularly, 1,500 who aren't, because I want to find out if you're not eating apples, why not? What made you maybe lapse in the category? Of those 6,000 people, 10% of them are actively using GLP-1 medications. And Kevin, I know that's something we talked about in the last webinar. Shara, I think you're going to talk about it in just a little bit, but GLP-1s is a big headline across our industry, across the health and wellness industry, and I have to assume it's popping up in the restaurant space as well. 10% of consumers, I've heard numbers that it could get up to 20 or 30%. I saw Lilly just launched their pill form today. I saw the announcement. And so it's becoming more readily available, as well as some of the side effects that they seem to be starting to improve. But of this active GLP-1 user group, 46% of them said that they had already increased their fresh apple consumption. And so they are finding ways to improve their diets, and apples are at the top of that list from the research we've seen. And if you look to the right, all of the reasons why are really clear when you think about the health benefits that the apple brings forward. So the satiety that you get, feeling fuller longer from the combination of that soluble, insoluble fiber, the pectins, the water that boosts that full feeling and helps curb cravings, the natural sugars that are helping to steady the blood sugar. You're not getting the spikes that you typically would if you're eating sugary foods or things like that. It is a low-calorie, dense food, so it supports that calorie deficit without sacrificing nutrition. The hydration of an apple, that 80 to 85% content, really easing some of those GI side effects that you see in here on the GLP warning labels. Prebiotic nourishment, and so the insoluble fiber that supports digestive health and weight management. And then, of course, the antioxidants, which is that number one driver for why people are eating more fresh fruits. It has, apples have the benefit of helping to fight inflammation to support overall metabolic health. And so we really feel like the timing of the SugarBee apple specifically with all the trends going on out there makes this an interesting opportunity for some restaurants that want to tap into this part of the audience out there. Have to talk about sustainability when we're talking about fresh fruits and vegetables. That is another thing that's really important to consumers, and we are committed to nurturing our food, planet, and people. And so pollinator protection is something that's really important to us. The bee is our mascot. The bee is the one that's credited for creating this apple. 100% of our farms are IPM certified. We leave a lot of acreage open to natural habitat, over 27,000 acres to support native bee habitats. Of course, we have to bring in commercial bees when you have commercial farms, but we always give native bees the first chance. Very committed to waste reduction, composting, all of the things, our energy usage, converting over to solar, a lot of renewable resources going in, and then, of course, responsible labor. We're at the top of the list when you're looking at all of the different expectations and audits and social responsibility that come our way. That's something that we can stand behind, very proud of the way that our fruit is grown, harvested, and then how we rehabilitate the planet for the future generations. Last thing I'll share with you, and then Shar, I'm going to turn it over, is so what could we do together? So SugarBee apples, you've heard me talk about how much we love them. The good news is the retail environment and customers love them too. They are the number one fastest growing emerging apple. So emerging apple is where you have new acreage coming in. The other category would be places that acreage is maybe stabilized or being reduced. Red Delicious would fall into that reduced category. 85% year over year over the last couple of years, and so really quickly growing. National distribution, we're offered just about everywhere that you would like for it to be, from the high-end grocery stores through mass retail as well. ICCA partnerships, thinking about ways that we could work with your team. We would love to partner on anything from culinary and menu innovation to marketing support and amplification. We put a lot of money driving consumer awareness of SugarBee apples, all the way through retail and into people's homes, events that we're doing. SugarBee is definitely the buzzword out there for consumers. 100% open to co-branded product lines, assets, limited time only guidance and strategy. Kathleen will have much more to share with you on those topics in just a minute. But in general, that's who SugarBee Apple is, what we're focused on with the health and wellness conversations that are going up. Would love to work with you guys on your menu ideations with your culinary teams to figure out what SugarBee could potentially mean for you.
I love that information. And the study too really kind of gets me because the numbers are huge. I love the fact you went up to 6,000 people. And that's one of the things I love about Datassential as well, is you guys really have, phenomenal numbers you're going after, which reduces the error factor and gives us real information that you can trust.
That confidence is very important. I agree. It was very fascinating. I don't know about anyone else, but I am definitely craving a crisp apple right now. Excited to be here today and talk a little bit about apples and trends with apples at first, but really diving into a few studies that we have related to GLP-1s. As we mentioned, it's been in the news lately. It's been obviously top of mind for many of us for goodness, over a year now, and just wanted to share some recent data that we have. So Diving in, first let's talk apples. Julie set up with an incredible, story of the SugarBee apple, and just wanted to share. We track so many different data points, as Kevin mentioned. We track social media, and actually just this week announced that we'll be tracking a whole subset of social media folks that we're calling foodies. So these are folks that are influencers as well as those that are just regular food bloggers and folks in the food space. So looking at that to get even earlier signals on the social media side and help us kind of figure out what to pay attention to these days. So with that in mind, the social signals that we were watching in the fall were definitely popping for apples in 2025. So when we looked at the keywords that were growing the most between Q2 and 3 in 2025, going into that fall season, apple was spiking. So not only caramel apples, but apple crisp in both the dessert form as well as in a variety of beverages, and then apple butter. Again, apple butter as a spread or a dip, but also apple butter terminology was being utilized in some beverages too. We all know that beverage innovation is huge and has been growing significantly for a while now, and we are seeing, this apple butter matcha that one of the social media influencers was highlighting as a key trend in that fall. And top chains released the most apple items in the fall. We do think it may start to rival some of those pumpkin spice. Folks are getting a little tired of the pumpkin spice in the fall. We want something new. We want something fresh. Apple has that unique flavor that consumers know and love, but at the same time, you can put a unique spin on it to make it fresh. So talking about making it fresh, there were 111 new menu item launches featuring Apple in 2025. We do know that Apple is loved and liked. 87% of consumers said that they like or love apples. And similarly, 87% of consumers that like or love apples also love or like barbecue. So it's really not surprising that this first item, the smoky barbecue brioche sandwich, was such a winner, right? We can look at those delicious barbecue flavors. It's indulgent, but you have the nice crisp of the apple in that slaw to cut through some of the richness. We, of course, see apples showing up in a number of bowls that are healthy, and those were released in January. But we see some uniqueness with this turkey apple crisp toast. So using apple in that toast concept, layering in with a turkey style open faced sandwich. And similarly, in the turkey cranberry melt. So utilizing apple in that classic turkey sandwich for a little bit of a spin. We kind of liken this to approachable innovation. I'm sure many of you have heard us talked about approachable innovation. So it's taking a concept that is loved and liked by consumers, but giving it just something, a little unique item, a twist that will make it feel a little more fresh for them to order. So that was on the savory side. And then we also wanted to showcase some sweet offerings here. So we have a chai apple spice muffin. So combining that really popular chai flavor that is surging in beverages on social media and with the younger generation, combining that with apple in a delicious spice muffin was a winner for the bakery here. And then, of course, our star player, the caramel apple cobbler from the Peach Cobbler Factory. Definite superstar. Consumers are still leaning into indulgence and little treat culture and looking for those delicious flavors that they can pair caramel and apple and cobbler. Such a classic combination there. And then some of the more unique items that we saw was this apple grande from Taco John's with an open-faced cross between a pizza and a pie here with that apple filling, some cheddar cheese on top, and then the caramel apple cheesecake pancakes, a very indulgent breakfast, or maybe just pancakes as dessert with the cheesecake topping, and apples from Corner Bakery also scoring exceedingly high with consumers leading into those indulgences. So those were just a few quick Apple updates for you all. But a majority of the data and slides I was going to share today is focused on the GLP-1. So Julie already mentioned, I also saw it in the news earlier today, or just yesterday, Lilly announced their GLP-1 pill for weight loss was approved. So we now have two pills on the market with GLP-1s. So just making it a little more approachable and easier for consumers. The recent pill I read is actually available and folks are able to take it at any time of day, as opposed to the pill that was the Wegovy pill, which needs to be taken first thing in the morning. So it's a little more restricted. So they're just continuing to make these easier for consumers to attain, as well as price points typically coming down. So we do think that they are going to continue to proliferate. Now, how big they're going to get, I think, is somewhat of a question if folks will stay on them very long term. But in this study, very similar to the data that Julie presented, we were reporting 11% of consumers were currently using them, and then roughly 27% had heard of them and were interested in. So that's where we get that total number of 38% either using or interested in. On the flip side, we do have a good subset of consumers, almost half, who have said they have no interest, right? So I don't necessarily see this as everyone leaning into GLP-1s, but there are those folks that say, not for me, not going to happen anytime soon. Some of the biggest concerns that consumers are stating they have about potential of considering GLP-1s include the cost, of course. We know some of that will come down, but of course, some of these others, the physical side effects, the weight gain once the medication is stopped, we have heard that is certainly a grave concern, leading folks to consider that they might have to take these on and on in order to maintain that weight loss, which is certainly troubling for many consumers. And then when we looked at what consumers were doing with regard to purchases, so when they are on GLP-1s, we're seeing roughly 39% saying they're buying less food in general. But about a quarter said that they didn't change their volume, but the types of foods that they purchased were changing. So they were shifting what exactly they were taking home and buying. They are leaning into healthier foods, roughly half of the consumers. But they are snacking less throughout the day. They're purchasing less in general, and they're just less interested in food. I'm sure many of us have heard the term food noise, reduces the food noise. I know that is a common phraseology that I've been hearing amongst many GLP-1 users. So less inclined to go on a pantry scavenger hunt in the middle of the night or the middle of the day when they're constantly thinking less about food. We also wanted to dig into a little bit of what they are specifically seeking out and decreasing. So within the study, we saw that almost half of consumers said that they were increasing their fresh fruit and fresh vegetables consumption, which is fantastic, right? Those are high quality, nutritious foods that we want consumers to generally consume more of across the board. So seeing those shifts, and then many of the quality proteins, coming up here, as well as some fiber-rich items, definitely makes sense that they are leaning more in that regard. Some of the items that they are decreasing are those ultra-processed foods, the fatty, the fried foods. I'm sure many of these are leading to more of the negative complications that we have heard of with GLP-1 users. So we've seen some steep declines in those categories. Now, some smaller shifts that we also were seeing are the users looking for items that have that specific GLP-1 friendly call out, of course, as well as some of those plant-based proteins. So your beans and your legumes, combining both the fiber and the protein in those plant-based items, I'm sure is a key call out, as well as some of those pre and probiotics. So again, combating some of those health effects and those negative effects that they may be feeling from the medications. And when we look at the beverage side, we have seen declines in caffeinated foods and beverages. So they are definitely decreasing that coffee consumption, but then alcohol across the board is seeing wide shifts and declines when folks are on those GLP-1s. Now, when we switch a little bit to an operator mindset, we see the large majority of operators say they're familiar and aware of GLP-1 drugs. And then we go into some of the operator perceptions. So we have a little bit of a split here. So roughly a little less than half of operators say they have no interest in adding any GLP-1 friendly dishes, while a similar number, 42%, are considering adding, but perhaps not necessarily calling it out. So we see about 13% said they already are doing this. They've added some items that they're specifically adding for the GLP-1 consumer, but not calling them out on menu. And we do expect that, this 42% number that are considering it may continue to lean into that regard, right? Looking at the components that GLP-1 users are looking for, whether it is smaller portion size, that protein and fiber, and those opportunities to lean in, but maybe not putting a stamp on the menu, but calling out some of those attributes and using language that makes it friendly for that audience, but perhaps other audiences as well. Operators are also a little bit split on how it's going to affect their business. So 41% don't think that the medications use will really affect their business either way. And we are seeing that 31% thinks it'll change somewhat, but really aren't concerned. So over a quarter, really not too concerned on the operator side for how this will affect their business. At the same time, consumers are very interested in those items that are GLP-1 friendly, whether they are specifically stamped with something or not. So roughly half interested in those GLP-1 friendly menus from both restaurant as well as retail. And then I have another study I wanted to present just a few slides from where we dug into portion size. So this is a joint study we did with ReFed, which is a non-for-profit focused on reducing food waste. And we looked at a whole host of portion size questions across general population consumers, but then we also did a deep dive of those consumers within the study that reported that they were currently using GLP-1. So within this study, we had 8% reporting current use of GLP-1. And then we were looking at some of the shifts and differences between those that the general population consumer, so that is represented with the yellow bar, noted non-user. And then we have the green bar is showcasing those that are current GLP-1 users, and then we have the difference on the right. So we see some significant differences here that GLP-1 users are significantly more likely than non-users to report being surprised by oversized servings or wishing for smaller portions, right? Over half of them say that they ate past the point of comfort at least once in the past month because of portion size as well. So, some concerning statistics that there's just misalignment between those that are going out to eat and then what the restaurants were offering. When we ask them what specific types of foods, where there was that misalignment, we see pasta entrees at the very top of the list, followed by pizza, those large meat entrees, as well as some of those large hot breakfast items topping the list for both the general population consumer and the GLP-1 users. And then compared to non-users, GLP-1s folks, they show stronger concerns about how portion control and value intersect. So certainly nobody wants a smaller portion than that makes them feel like they're getting ripped off, but that GLP-1 user has a little bit more skin in the game because they are looking for those smaller portions. On the flip side, we do see consumers also saying, they'd rather just pay a little more at times for a portion that actually fits their appetite, so they know they're not contributing to food waste. So just a number of stats that help us think through, is there a key opportunity perhaps to think about that portion size as more of an opportunity as opposed to a challenge? And when we ask these consumers as well, if a restaurant near you offered options that had more flexible portion size, would you be more likely to visit them? And we see a little over half of general population said they would be more likely to visit, but about 3/4 of those with GLP-1 use would be more likely to visit those restaurants, so they can customize to their current needs. And so we wanted to get a sense of what are some of those alternative or flexible portion size options that both general population and GLP-1 users would be interested in. And we see some of these pick two or mix and match combos. Of course, we're seeing a lot of this across the industry. Many of you, I'm sure, saw Panera's announcement somewhat recently. Taco Bell is leaning in with their Lux value menu, right? So there's a lot of small options, but you can put them together in a unique combination for yourself. We also see folks very interested in small, regular, and large portions. We see this, of course, with fries and with drinks, but maybe not quite as much with some of the entree or appetizers, other aspects of the menu where there could be an opportunity, where possible, for back of house to also have some of those different portion sizes to allow folks to customize to their current needs, and not necessarily just for the GLP-1 user, right? There are folks that may want a variety of dishes. I know I certainly love dining out in large groups because that means we can sample more. So if there were some smaller portions, kind of like a tapas menu, to go out and have the opportunity to select some smaller things, to either share in a small group or to have for yourself, to have more variety of flavors, consumers are reporting that they would be interested in those sort of options.
Thank you, Shara. Great information. I really enjoyed that. So now, Kevin, you see a face on the screen that you know really well. I'd like to introduce Kathleen Kennedy. I worked with Kathleen years ago, so I know her personally or professionally as well as personally, but she has joined us as our chef ambassador for SugarBee apples, and would love for you to take it from here, Kathleen. I'll let you introduce yourself, and then I can bring your slides up if you'd like.
Thank you so much, Julia. Julie and I worked together at a really big retailer where we worked on private brands, but I've known Kevin for over 30 years from when I was teaching at the California Culinary Academy. And I was one of the original sponsors in year 2 of the ICCA when I was at Schreiber.
So it was awesome.
I've been with this in a few lifetimes, I think, but I'm thrilled to announce that I am the chef ambassador for SugarBee apples, and really excited to work with Julie and Jen and Lorinda. Loved your presentation, Shara, and just learning a ton about apples, and it's one of my favorite things to eat. And I know, Shara, you said that you craved one. I had one just a little bit ago, and I had one of those glucose monitors, and it made my glucose get right. It's, so the health benefits are happening right here on screen. So I'm, a member of the Strategic Advisory Board and Chef Ambassador, and, really want to talk about where do SugarBee apples fit on your menu. So they earn your place on your menu. That's what we know about SugarBee apples. They're built for the line, not just for the production and the produce bin. They're great on their own, but they also really hold up under heat. One of the things that was fascinating to me was that they don't really brown. And so Julie had mentioned this on a call the other day. So I cut up an apple and it's been 48 hours and it hasn't really browned. And it kind of starts to dry. So I would, suggest using it in the first 24 hours. But I can't believe that it, that it's just a new way to look at like cheese boards. If you could cut up the apples a couple hours ahead of time, I didn't, I put some in the fridge and I put some out at room temperature and they both didn't brown. So that was really amazing. The other thing about this apple is that it is high in sugar, but it's balanced with acidity. So actually, when I had the apple, I actually had some caramel dip as well. And it didn't need the caramel dip. It on its own, it was just perfectly sweet and really balanced. It's very crisp as well. It's got a clean snap. Again, I'm in awe of the low browning, so I'm definitely going to use it in the future on cheese boards. And so it's very distinct without being polarizing. And we're here to offer marketing and culinary support if you're interested. I think it's a great opportunity to have a branded apple on your menu. Next slide, please. So it's one ingredient. So the SugarBee apples. Julie mentioned that there's cider as well. I'm looking forward to getting some of that soon and trying it. I love apple cider. Someone earlier put up a chat that they love Caramel apples. Well, I like to chop up caramel apples and take apple cider and make a vinaigrette and toss all that together with baby lettuce and maybe some kind of nut, and it's really delicious. SugarBee apples, as well as the cider, offer menu differentiation. There's sweet and savory versatility. Um, Having a branded apple and co-branding can help increase your check average. There's a lot of cross utilization opportunities, and it fills menu gaps, not just for general pop, but for GLP-1 users, as we were talking about. It's got a high impact and lots of applications. Next slide, please. So some of the ways to drive menu value, it works across all kinds of menu categories. One of my favorites is little bites or empanadas, calzones or puffs, sweet and savory fondue. Imagine a big bowl of a cheese fondue and dipping apple into it. The sweetness from the SugarBee apple complements the cheese, especially the Gruyere, very well. Again, small plates. Charcuterie is such a buzzword for the last couple of years. So SugarBee apples and a salumi board, or take some whipped ricotta, hot honey, very hot, and SugarBee apples, pun intended. So with the hot honey, so there is an extra hot Mike's honey and a regular hot Mike's honey, and either one of them would be amazing with the SugarBee apples. I made another salad recently, fresh and seasonal, up on the right-hand corner, and it was SugarBee apples, blueberries, pomegranate seeds, pomegranate and apple cider vinaigrette and greens. People went crazy for it at this party that I brought it to and wanted the recipe. And like you guys, I probably don't really write recipes down. So you guys, you understand that. People that are eating it don't. They're like, I want the recipe. Anyway, that signature items on your menu could be like SugarBee apple and burrata with some aged balsamic, or an autumn slog with SugarBee apple cider vinaigrette. Next slide, please. So here are some more ideas in the entree, desserts, and drinks categories. Pork belly with a SugarBee apple gastrique. So that's when you reduce sugar and you add apple. You can add the cider to it and some vinegar to it, and some sliced apples in there. A pork chop with sauteed apples, roast chicken with a SugarBee apple cider pan gravy, or salmon with SugarBee apples and a celery root slaw. One of my favorite ideas here is duck confit with sugar grilled apples, and there's a picture of that on the left side. There's also other pictures of salad and a sweet tart, like an apple streusel cheesecake, a salted caramel galette with SugarBee apples. How about some apple donuts and apple gelato or sorbet? And can't forget the mocktails, which I love mocktails, or cocktails, a SugarBee shrub, a SugarBee apple martini, or how about a smoked SugarBee old fashioned? Kevin, would you like that? Yeah?
That's a great idea. I love that idea.
Okay, next slide, please. So this is when we come to ideas, looking for you guys to throw out some ideas and to have some more of an interactive conversation about SugarBee apples. Have you tried them? If so, what did you think of them? And where would you use them on your menu? What kind of appetizers, salads, entrees, snacks, desserts, or cocktails would you like to use with SugarBee apples?
Jen, why don't we go to you now? Because we're talking about doing an event during your harvest season in Washington.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's
that's
talk a little bit
right.
about that.
Yeah, so we are really, really excited. We're going to be inviting you all here who are attending, or a limited number. We'll only have a few spots. We're going to be inviting you guys to join us to celebrate the SugarBee harvest, tour some orchards, see some of the apple packing, and then also experience some barbecue and bourbon. We have one of our chefs that we work with owns a restaurant here, and we've got a huge bourbon selection. And if any of you are familiar with Horse Soldier Bourbon, their founder lives pretty close to here. And so we had him over for a really amazing bourbon tasting and talk a few years ago. We'd like to have him come back and kind of give you guys some amazing stories and let you sample some bourbon. And then talking to Chef Tyler, he said he would love to show and share with you kind of the art and science of how to cook in a wood-fired oven, like how to actually really reliably cook in a wood-fired oven, and then how to incorporate and highlight local ingredients without breaking the budget. He thought those might be some fun things to touch on for those that join us. So it would be amazing. And I think we're looking at around October 8th and 9th. So if you're interested, put that on your calendar now, and you'll be getting more information soon with a full itinerary and some pictures of some of the things you'll be able to see and experience.
A lot of the restaurants we're talking to, especially the independent restaurants we were with here in Oregon and other places, that consumption of alcohol has dropped, which of course is affecting profitability. Have you seen much of that? Again, I know it's not a major portion of,
Yeah.
the bottom line
Yeah.
sales, but
We are definitely seeing it, but again, because it's such a small piece of our pie to begin with, we're not feeling it as bad as maybe some of the dinner focused or lunch focused concepts are. We were actually doing a food tour in LA last week, and very interesting, very well known fine dining restaurant. As soon as we sat down, he asked, "Is anyone at the table not consuming alcohol?" Like, wow, wouldn't not does anybody not who wants a drink?
right.
But like confirming like no one's drinking here, correct? And we were all like, "Oh no, no, we're going after it tonight." But it was just it like what a change in the world and
Yeah.
in the game, especially on the restaurant side. So, but no, we're not necessarily feeling it as bad as I think some of my peers might be. But I mean that I think that might also have to do with our day part.
Yeah.
Well, I
Um,
think it's the age, Kevin. Haven't you seen the people
Yeah.
under 30 are,
Yep.
turning away from alcohol, perhaps using a different smokable
Yes.
pastime? Um,
That's a
and
fact.
what I've seen, and I was just at the Pizza Expo last year and ate all over Las Vegas last week, um, is that people are offering lots of mocktails. There are whole mocktail menus. And I do think apple cider works really well with that.
Yeah, the mocktail thing is huge. And what's really interesting too, from a profitability standpoint, I mean, they're getting 14, $16 for a juice drink. It's like, why not? That's awesome.
I was at
they
Jean
are.
George and it was $12.
Yeah, yeah. There's a little pushback from what I hear from some of the restaurateurs. A little pushback on pricing for that because they know what the cost of alcohol is,
Right.
and they assume that is a big part of what you pay for when you get a cocktail. So with a mocktail, they're like, well, it should be cheaper. But in all reality, when you look at it now, so let's talk about even in your space, Shane. You're
Mhm.
talking about going out for a mimosa. I mean, they're buying, it's a $5 bottle of cava or whatever
Mhm.
they get, right? The orange juice costs more, right? So quite
Yeah.
honestly,
Oh,
there's more
yeah, yeah.
cost than the juice, right?
Cost per ounce for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've had this discussion and continue to have it quite often with everyone else jumping onto the, quote unquote mocktail trend, um, or it expanding. And I tell our chief brand officer and CEO, like we've had mocktails from the beginning, our fresh juice program. If you just rebranded it, we would probably sell more. It's like we've been doing that same thing for our breakfast day part. And each one of those in their own way could be considered a mocktail. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's cool. So I think we've got a couple other people on. I think, Mark, I think you're with us too. Mark Casal, who is with us here. And Terrence is on too. So Terrence, if you can talk, or Mark, if you
Yeah.
can talk as well. Yeah. How's it
Yeah,
going?
unfortunately, I can't.
Yeah.
Good, good. Hello, everyone. I just had a question about the apples. Are there any other product lines other than like cider? Do you have any IQ of dice, or is just the whole fruit or cider at this time?
We just have the whole fruit or cider at this time. We do work with a lot of food service companies that do sliced and stuff. We're just not sure what you guys want yet. So that's kind of what we're excited in this conversation is to figure out the other forms that would be making it more usable to you if it's not raw form.
Again, for us at the Olive Garden, I mean, we're not, like you said, we're not considering calling those out, but we're finding some support with like protein forward, more protein centric, or even offering protein pasta as an option, not as a main menu option on our menu as well. So really good conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think leaning into some of those attributes, but maybe not doesn't make sense for every brand to put a stamp
Right,
on the
right.
menu, right?
Definitely, definitely. Very cool.
Yeah, that's one of the conversations we had here too with everybody. We again, it was a GCIA connection, we call it, that we did here in Portland over the last 2.5 days. And GLP-1 was a major conversation. I mean, it's just everybody's talking about it and how you have to adjust to it and what you want to do. I did, Shara, I really did like the slides about the percentage, of the restaurants that are looking at it and how they're going to treat this, and some are ignoring it and some are not. But it's like, I don't think you can ignore it. I agree with the points brought up earlier too, that right now it's 10% of the survey you guys did, for SugarBee. But I hear even higher numbers,
Right.
in some ways too, and that it's growing. So it's something that, our industry is going to have to deal with.
Yeah, there's
Kevin, I can
significant
tell you, I'm
impact.
working with
Go ahead, Julie.
Kroger right now, trying to figure out, shoppers want to figure out how to navigate fresh fruits and vegetables and apples specifically. And I have a call with them next week because this is exactly what they're trying to do. They've had flavor meters, but they need to figure out the health icons. How do I highlight that apples are a good source of fiber? How do I highlight that it's, a GLP-1 friendly? And so I think you're going to see a lot more of this coming out, just consumer facing in general.
We have actually 2 LTOs coming out this October utilizing apples that we've done for quite a long time. One is a white cheddar and apple quesadilla, and we serve that with a maple crema. And then we're doing a chopped salad that has apples in it with a creamy apple vinaigrette that we're doing with a fresh cranberry salsa. So it's definitely a seasonal item for us that we've used for quite a few years. I've always been a fan of the Granny Smith apple in savory applications, but I will be looking at the SugarBee this year, and so I'll have to reach out and get some ideas from Kathleen and maybe coordinate on doing some ideas with that.
That would be great. I'll look forward to it, Mark.
Awesome. Any other final thoughts?
Just that Dot carries the apples and that they are in distribution. So that was one point that I really wanted to make, that they are available today. And, as Julie said, we're working through how to get them chopped or diced or cooked, however you want, based on what you're looking for.
Yep, and I see Mary's comment about the IQF diced and sliced, and so we'll be getting on that quickly.
How do they compare from a price point standpoint?
They're expensive. They're at the premium end. I mean, they just are. So basically, the retail shelf Honeycrisp right now is $2.47 a pound. We're $2.38. Honeycrisp usually is cheaper than that, but the limited supply has pushed the retail up the last month and is going to keep going that way. And so we're definitely at the high end.
Okay.
I love that honesty, by the way. Thank you.
I will tell you, SugarBee,
Yeah.
Kroger and Safeway Albertsons have made it their #1 pick. So they don't do private labels for everything, and they made it their private selection pick at Kroger and their premier pick at Safeway Albertsons. And so it's still definitely attainable. It's just hitting that higher income customer.
And premiumization definitely plays in with value, right? We know it's not a race to the bottom anymore. We see some of that in the restaurant space of folks continuing to lower prices, but we know many of the brands on the call today, right, also can push into that premium space and utilize the premium ingredients, the premium offering as part of that value equation.
Well,
and don't forget to mark your calendars, right? What did you say, October 8th and 9th?
8th and 9th. Yep, that's right.
Bourbon,
Yep.
barbecue, and apples. What more could we want in the fall?
Delicious.
you know how to speak
Yep.
to our audience, Kathleen, with the bourbon, right?
I started with bourbon. Bourbon
Yeah,
was not
exactly.
an afterthought. Throw in
Anyway, thanks
bonfire.
everyone. Really appreciate you guys being a new sponsor as well. Thanks to members coming on to have some conversation here too. We're going to go to Mike in the office back in Orlando as I sit here in Portland.